Hey, here we go. How's everybody doing? Okay. Um, change scenery a little bit. Anyway, want to continue with this lesson that we are working on with React Router, building the address book. Here, um, this is actual part five. So I think I have another one that's part five. I had to disregard. I'm gonna see if I can just delete that altogether. Anyways, we're gonna continue this. Where we left off on this tutorial, which you can find inside. I have it posted in the description. This is from reactrouter.com. Tutorials are not giving me any money. Not yet. Maybe one of these days. Anyways, um, we're here working with server side rendering. What we have now here's our app so far, our address book, and we can click on this link that will take us to this about component that's rendered. We also have a list of names like address book. If we click on it right now, it's just posting some data that already have uh, hard coded in the file, but we're going to change that really soon. So let's see where we are. In order for us to do that, we need to start working on server side rendering. You can see right here it says React Router is a great framework for building single page apps. Many applications serve well by only client side rendering and maybe statically pre rendering a few pages at build time. If you ever want to do, or if you ever do want to introduce server side rendering into your React Router application, it's incredibly easy. All we have to do right here is in our config, we're just setting our server side rendering this SSR, we're setting that to true. So I'm already here on reactrouter.config.ts file. And again, we're just setting server side rendering to true. And that's that on that. And now nothing is different. We're still getting our spinning for a split second before the page runs on the client. Plus, aren't we using client loaders for our data still being fetched on the client, which it is. That's right. With React Router, you can still use client loader and client action to do client side data fetching where you see fit. React Router gives you a lot of flexibility to use the right tool for the job. Let's switch to using loader, which you guessed it, is used to fetch data on the server. Switching to using loader to fetch data. So here in our sidebar, let's go to our sidebar. Let's look what we have. So sidebar.tsx, and that is in our layouts folder. And this is what we have currently. We're using our client loader, as you can see here. So we're going to do with our existing imports, we're going to export async function loader. So we're going to do that before this component. So right here, we will switch to using. Okay, so I think what we'll do, yeah, we'll just switch from client loader to loader. So export async function and just change this to loader. Await get context and return context. So all that is the same. Let's see if it looks any different. Right now, it does not. Everything looks just the same. Okay, just wanted to check. Whether you set SSR to true or false depends on you and your user needs. Both strategies are perfectly valid. For the remainder of this tutorial, we're going to use server-side rendering, but know that all rendering strategies are first-class citizens in React Router. So it doesn't matter whether you choose to use server-side rendering or client-side rendering. And again, not that it doesn't matter. It all depends on whatever the user needs. If you need to do server-side rendering, then you just follow those simple steps that were used here. Otherwise, you can just continue with having your SSR set to true and then you'll have a client loader. Okay, so let's get back to this lesson. Let's move a little further. We're in URL params and loaders. Okay, so click on sidebar links, and you should be seeing our old static contact page again, with one difference: the URL now has a real ID for the record. Okay, so in other words, if I click on here, if I click on it, this is the static information that again was hard coded. However, what's different is if we look in the URL, it's pulling up an actual ID right here, as we can see here, for each one that I click. All right. So remember the contact ID part of the root definition. That was a long time ago. These dynamic segments will match dynamic or changing values in the position of the URL. And what does that is the colon contact ID. So specifically that colon, because that colon is saying, hey, this information is dynamic, meaning that it can change, or it does change. It varies depending upon the object that it is pulling from. These params are passed to the loader with keys that match the dynamic segment. For example, our segment is named colon contact ID, so the value will be passed as params.contact ID, and that's important because that params is an object that contains certain properties, and those properties are based on the name of the query, if you will. These params are most often used to find a record by ID. Let's try it out. So add a loader function to the contact page and access data with loader data. The following code has type errors in it. We'll fix them in the next session. Cool. So I'm glad they let us know that. So let's go to our contact.tsx. Contact.tsx. That is right here inside of our routes folder. Okay. And again, you can see that's where I have this initial information here for contact, where I put my static information, and I probably could just grab or rename the image, but I didn't want to worry about it. It does the same thing, and loads everything up, but it's going to change anyways. So let's go look under existing imports, and we'll start adding these imports. Do we have any imports in here? Yes, we do. We have this import form, import contact record. Okay, and so now we're going to import. What are we importing here? We are importing get contact. We're destructuring get contact from data. Okay. And then next thing we're going to do is import type route. Let's make sure we get that. I know last time in last one of the previous videos, I got that wrong. So import type route from // plus sign types / root. Okay. And then we want to add this here, this export async function loader. So export async function loader. And this takes as an argument destruction params. Let's get this right. And I like to usually have spaces in between, say parentheses and curly braces here, as you can see. It just helps it, makes my code a little more readable. Because, when people are trying to follow along or read what I have, it can be a challenge. If you're not careful and all of everything you're typing is all running together, it can definitely be a challenge, which also means that there's a lot of space for errors. Okay, so we're passing in the params, destructured params, or the route dot loader arguments. Okay, and so here we're going to say const contact gets await, and get contact. So get contact, pass it in with params.contact ID as argument. And again, you're going to see the error because, as I mentioned, there's some type errors that's going to get fixed. And then we're going to return the contact. And we're passing it as object, yep, or destructured. So returning contact. Okay, cool. And then for our contact here, we're going to change this up a little bit. So export default function contact. And as an argument, we're going to pass in loader data, curly braces rather. There we go. Route.component props. And then const contact, it's loader data. So I'm going to say bye-bye to all that other stuff that I have. Well, this object here, this is going to get removed. No, don't go. This has to go. Because this is going to be rendered dynamically. And let me also say this, because I know these videos here, looking at them, you see in some places there's semicolons at the end of lines. In other places there are not. With JavaScript, semicolons, they represent the end of a line of code or a statement. Rather, so it may not be an individual line, but it actually is more like the ending of a statement or say a block of code. Okay. And with JavaScript, it is not mandatory that you end each statement with a semicolon. I myself personally, I am team no semicolon. There really isn't a right or wrong with that. This is just simply, again, my preference, what I choose to do. I always tell my codlings, however, they need to use semicolons at the end of their statements, and I strongly recommend that if you're new to JavaScript, that you use semicolons, because you'll, as a developer, you'll become a polyglot, right? And you'll be writing in multiple, or you'll learn multiple languages. You may not necessarily be writing in multiple languages, but you will definitely learn multiple languages. And in some languages, it is mandatory that you have a semicolon at the end of a statement, for example, PHP, in which case it's going to be difficult for someone who is learning how to code, someone who's, a couple of months, a year or so into the world of development, having to wire their brain to know when it's okay to use a semicolon, when you don't need one, it can be difficult, right? So I always say, hey, just use a semicolon, and don't worry about it. Just use a semicolon whether you need to or not. If you are just learning a new language, or just learning how to code altogether. But if you've been doing it for a while, you can kind of wire your brain, or rewire it. Say, okay, I'm in the land of PHP, or I'm in the land of JavaScript, I'm in the land of C Sharp or Java, or what have you, and how to the proper syntax for it. Okay, so that's just an FYI, just a little tip. So you'll see that from me, but I don't like to use semicolons. Wherever you see a semicolon used, that's probably because I allowed Visual Studio Code to autocomplete what I have. All right, so here we go. And so now I suppose it should look like this. Look at that. Look at Clifford. So, and now it is dynamically loading up. Hey, Michael Jackson. I can't say that I'm not disappointed because I am. I thought it was gonna be the greatest of all time. Anyways, so now it's loading dynamically because what is it doing? We're allowing server side rendering, okay? And so, okay, we did that. And then in our sidebar, I believe it was, we're using we have this new function loader where we exported it, and we're get context and await get context. So this is all from get context and the data.ts file. So here it is right here. And this is here our fake context. So it's pulling the data from this location. Okay. And so, and we can see here, these are our contacts. That's each one of them. So we're pulling the data from get contacts. And then what we're doing in contact is we're just loading it up, our loader data right here, passing it as an argument, and essentially turning, we're how to say, destructuring this object contact from loader data, and we're getting that information. And so now here in our return, our JSX is getting the first, last name, the avatar, etc., all that information. But all of that is being pulled from this data file that we have here. Now, again, with this, with our get context, and you can see here, we have this promise here. We could actually make an API call. So while the information, the context are dynamic, if you will, is still in what we would call local storage, because it is from a data file that is within the directory or the root of the project. But we could have this data sitting somewhere, in the cloud, in the database somewhere out there in the cloud, in which we would need to make an API call and hit, that remote server and pull up that data that way. Either which way, the server side rendering that this property here that we added, setting server side rendering to true, allows us to do that. Okay, so now it works, and now we have all of the we got all of this dynamic information here. So cool. that works. Let's see. Let's move along. Let's see what we got next. Throwing responses. You'll notice that the type of loader data.contact is contact record or null. Based on our automatic type safety, the TypeScript already knows that params.contact ID is a string, but we haven't done anything to make sure it's a valid ID. Since the contact might not exist, get contact could return null, which is why we have type errors. So in other words, right now, TypeScript, it already understands that contact ID is a string, but what happens if it's not a string? What happens if the ID is not, what happens if it's invalid? What do? We don't have anything for that yet. So we need to throw a response. And this is another part of the async await function, I guess. It says, what do we do if there is an error? How do we handle that? So we could account for the possibility of the contact being not found in component code, but the way we think to do is send a proper 404. 404 is just the code just saying, hey, this information is not found. We could do that in the loader and solve all our problems at once. So that would happen inside the loader. Cool. So we're going to go to contact.tsx. Let's go back there. And we go right here. And we'll say if there's no contact, okay, or if contact is not true. So above the return, because again, it has to go above the return. Hey, if there's no contact, what do you want us to do? We're going to throw a new response. Oh, this is lowercase, and my apologies. Throw a new response. 404. Again, that just simply means, hey, this something's not found. Oh, that needs to be not found. I'm sorry. And then the status, the 404 status here. Right here, we'll set the status to 404. Hey, it's not found. Now, if the user isn't found, code execution down this path stops and React Router renders the error path instead. Components in React Router can focus only on the happy path. Okay, so that's good. We've done quite a bit right there. Now, again, you can always go back, pause, check these videos, slow it down. We have you check your spelling, definitely check your syntax to make sure that that everything is lined up and positioned correctly. And if you're not getting this, I go back and watch the videos, go look at the demo again, just take your time reading through it, and make sure that everything matches up. And we're going to go to lesson, I guess it'd be part 6 of this lesson, which we're going to go into data mutations, which is going to set us up so where we can create our own context. So I can go back and placing the image that I have, placing that in the as a context as well. All right. See you next lesson.